5, 10 years down the road, maybe do a light burn again, and just do it every 5 or 10 years, and maybe keep that that fire break there.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's kind of the irony of the Butte fire, is the fact that over the past year we've worked with, I believe there's 37 separate landowners, of which the Rodmans, you know, and through the Roaring Camp is a big, the largest PG&E, large parcels out at the end of Quail, and it basically runs about 8 miles from Blue Lake back to Highway 88 at Aqueduct Grove, or Aqueduct Grove Road. And we'd actually spent the last year developing a vegetation management plan to increase the scope of the Pine Acres Fuel Break and actually include all of those areas we're able to treat all the way to the river. And so we actually have a plan in place to use fire as a tool in the canyon on Tinsley will have the acres, but it's several thousand acres versus just a ribbon of fuel break. You know, the irony of it now is about 75% of it's treated because of the fire itself. And so it actually does give us some time, that 10-year lag time, to come up with the plans.
But it'll come back if we don't do something about it.
Correct, but on the day we needed the Pine Acres Fuel Break, it worked, and I think I've shared the success story document, internal document that we wrote with CAL FIRE, and I'll be glad to share that. And it's a public document; it can be put on anyone's
probably
website.
Probably a big chunk of the county.
Yeah, and it really did work. So it gave us a place to fight fire. The first night of the fire, we actually did defensive backfiring operations that saved homes with no need to prepare the lines because the fuel break had already prepared those lines. And we are going back as early as the next coming weeks to finish the work that the fire did not do for us and ensure that the entire stretch of the fuel break is maintained moving forward. So with that, I would like to bring Chief Tinsley up to talk a little bit about those projects we do have in play, as you know, not only just a response to the Butte fire, but really an understanding that although limited and although not to the scope that they could be, we do have efforts in place moving forward.
CAL FIRE. I'm not going to go over what Chris has just talked about. I mean, this fuel break, it was a success story. That was one of the lessons we learned from this fire, that it put in the correct place, with the right treatments, the right participation by landowners who use defensive space, clearance, they are effective. The north rim of that canyon from Butte to Pine Acres, as indicated, has been worked on and maintained over the course of the last 12 or 13 years. We just have re-upped a new vegetation management plan, which is good for another 36 months. And as Chief Post indicated, our plan will get back in there as early as a couple of weeks from now to maintain what was done prior to the Butte fire, and then to elaborate on, if you will, the effect of the Butte fire on the fuel break. It is roughly 2,500 acres. It is a cost share program, and we're in cooperation with PG&E and some 60-some-odd landowners between Taboo and Mount Zion, who have allowed us right of entry onto their property, where we will continue to do fuel reduction, modification, treatments, in the hope of maintaining that into the future to guard against the next one. There are a number of other vegetation management plans within the county limits that you should probably be aware of. One is up in Dokes Ridge, if you will, just east of the Tiger Creek Powerhouse, up to Highway 88. That's in cooperation with PG&E and Sierra Pacific Industries. That's another couple thousand acres of land where we are doing fuel reduction modification and including broadcast burning, pile burning, and road clearance. Yes.
Is that stewardship land that CAL FIRE received from the Stewardship Council as a demonstration forest?
There are about 1,100 plus or minus acres of the PG&E disposition land, which does incorporate the fuel break in the EMP that we're talking about.
At Dokes Ridge, yeah.
So at some point, if that goes through to fruition, we will acquire those PG&E lands within the boundaries of the DMP, and we will continue in cooperation with SPI to do the fuel modification where necessary to maintain that as a viable fuel break from highway to river, if you will, in other ends of our county. The other one we have in place, it's been long-standing, it's been ongoing for 6 or 9 years now. They're good for 36 months, and then we have to re-up them, if you will, through a process through region in Sacramento. Is what we call the Shake Fiddle fuel break. It is a true WUI, wildland urban interface fuel break. has another 60 or 70 private landowners and SPI as cooperators, and we're out there literally amongst parcels and homes, habitable structures, reducing the fuels and treating fuels with the work of the crews out of Pine Grove Camp. On top of that, there are a number of CWPPs, Community Wildfire Protection Plans, that have been developed for the county in cooperation with the Fire Safe Council. One is the Greater Pine Grove CWPP. I encourage people to read that. The other one is the Pioneer Volcano CWPP, which is just east and north of that. It's another excellent document, so if people live in those areas, it is a document that they can go to online through the Fire Safe Council and read up on those types of things that they are required or should be doing on their own parcels to maintain them. The goal essentially really is to break up both the vertical and horizontal continuity of fuels. That's really what Defensible Space and 4291 inspections or creation are all about. I can suggest another website, if you will. If you Google California Creating Defensible Space Guidelines, that's an excellent 9 or 10-page document that speaks to what you have to do to become compliant with Public Resources Code 4291 as it relates to defensible space within 100 feet of your habitable structure or the property line, whichever is closest. The third CWPP, which is in the works, if you will, is the Upcountry CWPP, which I see council is working on. And I believe when that is finished, it will also be an excellent document for the people who are in those areas to review and see what they can do to make their homes and their properties more defendable. Other things we're doing, as Chief Post alluded to, with SRA fire prevention fee dollars. Annually, we get what we call a Cal Fire Project Fund of SRE fire prevention fee dollars. This year, at the unit chief's discretion, we have chosen to use that on 7 different projects, if you wanted. Well, one was the establishment or development, if you will, of a pre-attack plan for a community in Amador County. That's in Battalion 3. The discretion as to what community that is has been left up to Chief Post and the Battalion Chief Blankenheim. But we assume that each year this is a recurring funding source for us, that we will continue to move through Amador County, developing a pre-attack plan, evacuation plan for community after community at the discretion of Chief Post and the field battalion chief. Some of the other things we're doing with SRA dollars is we are working in conjunction with county roads. You are aware that we have for years used crews to assist county roads, Department of Transportation with the ingress and life safety clearance of fuels within the right-of-way of those county road systems. Historically, we have gone where the county has asked us to go. This year, because we came with CAL FIRE project dollars, we had asked our field battalion chiefs to identify those roads within Brick County system which they had concerns with. That list was generated. I met with Aaron Brusatori, and we had a discussion about that road list. Not surprisingly, their list of roads of concern were the same, in most cases, with ours. And so this year, we are actively, again, with SRA dollars, bringing not only the road crew, but the dollars to pay for that road crew for that day, provided we go into those roads that we have identified within your system. Another thing we're doing, again, is using using crews, BMPs, and Yokes and Shakespeare, again, to continue to increase the fuels and modify those fuels and broadcast them so they're more defendable moving forward. I can't emphasize enough the need for people to understand what Chief Post alluded to is Ready, Set, Go. Ready, Set, Go is a 3-phase campaign that we've had now in existence for a number of years. That really is an excellent guide to prepare people for wildfire. It speaks to readying your home, hardening your home. It speaks to identifying locations to meet your family members if you get separated. It speaks to driving the evacuation routes from your house both during the day and the night. It speaks to remedying the prescription of medication. A lot of people, when they run out the door, they don't take prescription medication with them. It's an excellent source of information to prepare people in the event that a wildfire is going to approach their properties. A couple of other websites, if I may, is readyforwildfire.org, another excellent source of information. And one of the last things we spoke about was tree mortality. There's a new website called prepareforparkbeetle.org, another excellent source of information for tree mortality. As we spoke briefly about this morning, there has been a CAL FIRE tree mortality task force developed as a result of the executive order by the governor on October 30th of last year. They also have a website, which is an excellent source of information as to what landowners can do about the dead and dying trees. So that, I think that we should vote.
Questions?
Yeah, we have a historic fire break, and that's the CCC Ponderosa. Is there any thought ever, or are all the right-of-ways lost by now?
Well, specific to Amador County, the right-of-way from Clinton Road to the river has been lost because we took that portion of the road out of public domain. On the Calaveras side, of course, it runs through public lands. But oddly enough, the Pine Acres fuel break is in essence on the Ponderosa Way. So from that perspective, although it's not on the same center line as the Ponderosa Way, it uses the same general location and premise. But and that speaks to those folks that chose the places to put the fuel breaks to begin with. They picked the right places, and I think that that's one of the things we need to consider moving forward is to potentially stop choosing new places to build fuel breaks and go to the traditional fuel breaks and maintain them, because you only need to go back in the record to see where the fires have occurred and where they're going to occur again.
That CCC road, the Ponderosa Trail, is the length of the state pretty much. And in our county, I know from Charleston Road you can drive through or down to Sutter Creek Volcano Road, and then you could cross Sutter Creek and go out, but you can't do that anymore. It's overgrown, but it seems like a natural, really good fire break to protect that area and closer to Pine Grove and Upper Ridge Road.
Well, recall that was put in some years ago. I think demographically the population densities in the county have changed since then. And so there's a major concern with those disparities, if you will, from where it was originally and where we think we need to be today. I would agree with Chief Post that we do have over time proven that the ridges and promontory ridges and associated ridges that are defendable in a fuel break system do work. Our concern is we need to maintain what we have. For us to get additional funding and monies to create additional fuel breaks doesn't seem the right course of action for us. We need to, what we have done, identify the ones that exist and maintain those, hopefully for a long time to come.
Carol, I'm going to invite one of the property owners on Ponderosa Way up. It looked like she wanted to comment on that CCC road.
Yes,
You're
we
welcome
own the
to,
property
Carol.
on the CC road.
You got to come up.
We own the property on the CC road, and my family's owned it for many generations. And we used to have a lot of problems down there. They would shoot the cows, the kids would go down there and burn things. And in fact, you may know about this, but on the bridge, a bunch of kids started a fire on the bridge and they burned the whole the wood off the bridge. Well, in cooperation with the forestry, can I talk about this? Absolutely. They were kind enough to, there's a gate down there now. Now the forestry has a key, PG&E has a key, we have a key, and there's two other people that have keys who belong, are able to go up and down there. Now when the fire started, you guys opened the gate, and they did a lot of road repair down there. They were down there. They've been very, very helpful. They've, like I said, repaired the road. They put rice hulls in the road. Been very helpful. I just wanted to tell you that. You were talking about it being open. Well,
I mean, not necessarily open, but used as a shaded fuel break and maybe escape route if needed. The reason I bring it up, I just served 2 years on the Sierra Nevada Conservancy, and we had a presentation from a gentleman up north, I believe in Butte County, and he was talking about reinstituting that, CCC Ponderosa Trail. And it kind of makes a little bit of sense for me for escape routes and maybe a shaded fuel break. But I know the problems you've had up there. I grew up in this county, and we used to go up there to the CCC bridge, but I was a very good kid.
Statute of limitations might not be up.
The only thing we did is we used to like to swim.
anyway, I feel the people who need to get down there at any particular time have access to that property, and there's no problem with it. Thank you.
And, you know, and part of that system, I mean, our Middle Bar Bridge was in, you know, pretty dilapidated, and about, 20 years ago, we got a grant and fixed that bridge back up, so.
Well, actually, it's a pretty good segue. The CCC bridge, the one that's been burnt and is out of service now for, I guess, almost 10 years, is actually a CAL FIRE-owned bridge. And we actually own a few bridges, because when we did build the Ponderosa Way, right around the World War II era, to protect from the Japanese and the incendiary balloons, I mean, it's the birth of CAL FIRE, or CDF then, is the Ponderosa Way. The bridge, though, would, to return the bridge to operational status was actually proposed. It's administratively managed by the Tuolumne-Calaveras unit of CAL FIRE, and was identified in a document I actually wrote about 6 or 8 years ago. And of course, from a CAL FIRE engineering perspective, it's so dilapidated it's not worth maintaining, nor is CAL FIRE accepting the liability for travel on the bridge, and so when you look at it from that kind of perspective. However, I think an opportunity may exist post-Butte fire to exert some political will to potentially find funds and a willingness to restore the bridge, especially since there is some degree of willingness to restore access where the road is public on the Calaveras side of the river. I would just throw that out there. But the reason I throw that out there is really to, one, thank you for this opportunity. And really where the dialogue's going now is exactly what I would like to ask the community is to engage. The location of fuel breaks, the choice of projects, the participation of willing landowners, all of that stuff is found in your community wildfire protection plan that's created through the Amador Fire Safe Council, and then it's validated by both the Board of Supervisors and the State Forestry Agency under the federal laws that establish the community's ability to create its own wildfire protection plan. So being engaged in that really is where one of the things that we need to do moving forward. And so in closing, just a couple of comments is there was a comment earlier about tracking of water locations, and I would also like to recognize Amador Water Agency that shortly after the Butte incident, we convened a meeting to ensure that we did have all their accurate records, because that was one of the pieces of information we went looking for early on in the firefight. The pre-attack plan, we're building on the temporary plan we put in place during the fire itself, had the fire cross the river and come back into Amador County into the Pioneer area, and I appreciate the efforts with Amador Fire Protection District in assisting with that. And then just to dispel a couple of rumors, and I know they haven't been mentioned today, is that not to get in a debate over federal lands management policy, because this isn't the appropriate forum for that, is that regardless of where you land on the issue, it's important to recognize the working relationship that CAL FIRE has with both the BLM and the Forest Service, El Dorado National Forest, Amador Ranger District. And so none of those relationships were barriers during the onset of the fire or during the ongoing firefighting operations. There were no barriers, so regardless of where you lie on the land management issue. And so those relationships are strong and in place and working. And then the use of aircraft in and around the McKelvey River. There was also no barrier from either the BLM nor the East Bay Municipal Utility District on the use of aircraft. And the only reason I mention those two things is I recognize that there's discussion going on in the community as to whether or not there were any barriers in the earliest hours of the fire that could have changed the outcome. And I would suggest to you, having been the one responsible for the fire during those hours, that to my knowledge, that there were no barriers, and I just think it's important to ensure that information is out there. So with that, I would open it to any questions.
Thank you for clarifying those things.
Well, I'll lead off, Chief Post, with one observation and one anecdote. The observation was actually at one of the meetings over at the Plymouth Fairgrounds. It was after your initial incidents meeting. I think it was collaborating or cooperating agencies meeting or something to that effect. And it relates back for the institutional knowledge of local individuals or local knowledge to be at play a little better in the traffic control and direction of things. And I'll bring about, well, first was the story that we were getting evacuation information from a very kind gentleman from San Diego law enforcement who couldn't pronounce McCallum, let alone have any knowledge of the local streets and roads in the area. So that was just a little unnerving in that information, if it had to come through him and out to various individuals and agencies in the community, just how clear of an understanding he would have had of the interrelationship of roads and the terrain in the area. And it speaks to an incident that occurred early on when we had our key reporters doing an excellent job over there waiting anxiously for the next thing to write down. Jennifer, you got people signing in. I think Mr. Lambert from East Bay Mud is in the starting blocks again. Sorry we delayed you there.
I see this is a challenge for the tall people.
It is. You got to speak right into that mic.
So good afternoon, board. My name is Kent Lambert, East Bay Municipal Utility District. I'm a manager with the Watershed Recreation Program. Also a resident of the county to the south, Calaveras. Thanks for the invitation to come and talk today and address any questions that come up. And I applaud you on the survey and the workshop as a very proactive way to reach out to the community. As you probably know, East Bay Mud property that we own goes from about Comanche Dam, not quite to the Highway 49 bridge. So none of our owned properties were affected by this fire. That's 18,000 acres of land in between them. However, our priority on any fire, whether it's on East Bay Mud land or the surrounding lands, is to cooperate with CAL FIRE and in whatever way we can to make our resources available for combating that fire. So I just have a couple of relatively minor communications things that came up for us, which I think we've resolved, or we are in the process of doing that. But I thought I'd share them in light of the whole learning process that's going on here. On the first day of the fire, the super scoopers were invited down, and the first time I got to see them in action. And I guess initially there was some question about whether they could operate on Pardee Reservoir. As it turns out, the reservoir was closed to the public at that time entirely, which it normally would not be in September. So we were able to quickly address that, let CAL FIRE know that there were no issues with taking water off of Pardee, no public safety issues whatsoever. The second thing that came up had to do with the Big Bar facility, the kayak takeout just west of the bridge there. And I think Highway Patrol was under the impression that was controlled by East Bay Mud, which is not. It's a BLM facility. So in both instances, we were able to address those quickly and make sure there was no delays in taking action there. However, both of them give us opportunities to improve in the future. One conversation that we're having with CAL FIRE right now is to talk about the super scoopers, and in the event a fire happens when there is the visiting public out on Pardee or Comanche, how we're going to manage that and keep the public out of harm's way. So we are in the process of talking with the folks at CAL FIRE there.
Better make sure all the boaters have parachutes.
The second one is we annually prepare a fire plan, which we share with Tuolumne, Calaveras, Amador, El Dorado fire districts and the sheriff's departments. But we don't share it with CHP, so that came to mind as a way to help communicate with them about contact numbers and maps of district property. So those are just relatively minor things that we're working on, and so we can learn and improve as well.
Mr. Lambert, is there permission required or clearance required for a state agency like CAL FIRE to access water that's essentially owned by East Bay Mud to put out a fire like that? I mean, we were in drought conditions, everybody was on, restrictive orders and conservation orders, and we're scooping hundreds of thousands of gallons out of your reservoirs.
Certainly nothing that I'm aware of. The only issue that I was aware of would have been public safety.
Okay.
The helicopters routinely scoop from Pardee or Comanche, whatever the nearest water source is, to fight those fires.
And there's no restriction, it's open access, if they need it, they.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Have you had any water quality issues?
Remarkably, it's been relatively minor. Of course, the outlet tower at Pardee is very far removed from the inflow on the upper end, so there's 7 miles of reservoir there for the sediment to fall out. Turbidities were certainly high in the upper part of the reservoir, but we're doing really well.
Good to hear.
I appreciate your speed with which you were able to get some reseeding activities done, because we got very fortunate that this year probably shaped up almost ideally for seed propagation early in fall. We had some warm rains and light rains and warm weather afterward, and you could definitely see the effects of that seed propagation. So
I agree that we were lucky in that
we
regard.
were lucky we didn't get some deluges right at the start.
Jim McCargy.
Good afternoon, Jim McCarty. I'm the Air Pollution Control Officer with the Amador Air District. And I just wanted to real quickly touch on Supervisor Oneto's question as to the effectiveness of the masks that were discussed earlier. These are referred to as N95 face piece respirators. And what they do is they block 95% of the smallest particles in the 0.1 to 0.3 micron range. So we're talking millionths of a meter. So these masks are extremely effective, and although some people, I saw some people wearing the paper masks that you get when you're sweeping up or blowing, and those do not protect you. They have to be at least an N95 or higher mask, and that is what we were distributing. I wanted to comment real briefly on before the fire. So last June, the Amador Air District conducted a workshop, and we invited 3 representatives from the California Air Resources Board. We invited Dr. Kerr from Public Health. We invited Joanne Hassan from the school district. She's the health services coordinator. And we invited John Silva from County OES. And we had a meeting specifically last June to discuss air quality during a wildfire event and smoke messaging and outreach. Specifically because we knew that, as we all have heard over and over, it wasn't a matter of if, but when this was going to happen. And so what we did, we had 2 main goals with that meeting. Number 1 was to coordinate with the Air Resources Board on their deployment of emergency air quality monitors. What they do is they're able to deploy these monitors out in the field here in the county and be able to give us real-time, real data on what the air quality is doing. And they can sometimes deploy these things in a matter of hours. They're really, really good on getting these things out. And then the other thing we wanted to do is discuss what we would do regarding the smoke, the air quality, the smoke impacts, and getting the message out, because obviously schools will be impacted, athletic events, outdoor activities, all these things need to be looked at. And Dr. Kerr with Public Health needs the best information she can have. And so I worked with her very closely in getting and going on, and we each went on our computers and we were looking at the data streaming across as far as what the air quality was doing. And actually some school closures and some events were postponed or canceled because the air did get pretty bad. So then the only other thing beyond that, and I just want to emphasize that, had an old football coach who said, you play like you practice, and that's the case here. You know, we perform in these events the way we plan and practice and drill. And so I think that meeting was extremely important. When the fire occurred, within, I think the second day, Dr. Kerr and I were already in direct communication. She had mentioned the availability of the N95 mask, and by Saturday, we were out distributing those. Yes, initially, our list of distribution points was somewhat limited, but we reacted and responded very quickly. We were out all day Saturday and all day Sunday distributing those, and I think we ended up with a list of probably almost a couple dozen locations where we have these masks available. So again, it was a matter of the pre-planning and preparation, getting good, real data, and being able to provide that information, and then also getting the information out to the public. And we did utilize KBGC radio. Jim Geedy did an excellent job of keeping in touch with us and getting the word out. Thank you.
Jim, do you think moving forward that you might have a predetermined list that's sort of geographically dispersed of points of distribution of those masks?
Yes.
So that you don't have to work it out as you go, but it's known when an event happens, all of these businesses have agreed to be distribution points.
Yeah, and we do have that, and we have incorporated that into our planning. The power outage was also a bit of a problem because we needed to make sure that folks, you know, were there and could facilitate distributing the masks. So once the power was back up and running, we certainly could get up to Buckhorn Market and other places.
Places with generator backup or something. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kelly Reason.
Join the club.
Kelly Reason, Director for Animal Control. And I am here to kind of address the animal evacuation part of this. We, the first night of this fire, received a call from the Sheriff's Department late and started an evacuation center immediately at the fairgrounds. I activated the Amador County Animal Response Team, also known as ACART, and they are a group of individuals from the county who are volunteers who have started this group to do nothing but set up the housing and to watch out for, to take in these animals during these events like this. They plan monthly, they have meetings, and that's what they do, and they've been preparing for these type of things, and thank goodness that they were there to help us out. Without them, we would have really been struggling. So in the course of the time at the fairgrounds, we took in over 450 animals in that short period of time, housed every one of them, got them all back to their homes safely at the end of this. So it was really awesome to see the whole thing to come together and to watch all these people work and to get all those animals home safely. Some of the big points that we've taken from this are, there were a lot of rogue people out there trying to get in to the evacuation areas that didn't need to be in there.
A lot of what people?
Rogue type people
Okay.
that wanted to get in, that didn't have the proper authority to do those things. They were writing animal evacuation on the side of their trailers and just trying to get in and pull animals out in places that they didn't need to be in. They made a lot of trouble for the Sheriff's Department, blocked roads and things, people trying to get in and out of those. So moving forward, we really need to try to plan for these things ahead of time. We do have people that are trained to do these things. The Sheriff's Department contacted us to go in, and we were feeding and watering animals on site to make sure that animals were taken care of in the places that they should have been and to remain in those areas so that we didn't have people in there putting themselves in danger trying to pull things out that didn't really need to be moved at that point in time.
Did the sheriff help you in asking those people to leave the
Yes,
premises?
the Sheriff's Department, they
Oh.
managed all of those,
Oh, good.
those incidents with
Good.
people that shouldn't have been in those situations. But my officers were in feeding animals for people every day on site and making sure that those animals that could stay behind the lines were safe so that we didn't have other animals that needed to be pulled out of there. But at the same point, we had animals coming from Calaveras County because those people had no place for them to go as well. So we had probably 75% of the animals that we ended up housing were from Calaveras County at this point. But I would encourage people in the future, part of the problem was the donation end of this as well. And we had donations flowing in from everybody, and that was amazing to see our community come together and just want to donate as much as they possibly could. But there are ways to make those donations work, I guess, a little bit better. And there were agencies and things that were taking those. And so trying to come up with something in the future to kind of streamline all of that so that, you know, we don't have people out there just dumping donations here and there and people not kind of knowing exactly the best way to go about that. So I think if in the future we can work on making sure that those things kind of happen in the right way and getting a plan together for donations and things.
I expect that you communicate with the Lawtons for the animal, yeah, so,
Yeah, we
because
worked out quite a bit.
I went there several times and they had a very simple but clever way of listing the donations. They had a high priority,
Yep.
you know, in order of priority, and then lesser priority.
And part of the problem too was when you get the social media involved, as soon as you put something out there about what you need, then you end up with 100 times more than you
Right.
need that particular item. And so we had everything that, and plus more than we could possibly use for this event, which was amazing for our community to come together the way that it did. The Lawtons definitely stepped up on their end with their property and helped us out that way on that end of the county. But ACART, they did an amazing job, and I just want to make sure that they're recognized too in everything that they did during this event and in the future. And anybody who wants to join their efforts, they meet monthly. They have a group of people that are dedicated to doing this. So each time that we have one of these things occur, we have a group of people that are already trained, that are ready to activate and to step up and do these things.
You have to know how to work with large animals or just
Large
kitties
animals,
and dogs?
Small animals, any kind of animals. We house all the way from rats up to horses and cows. So
Okay.
we had pretty much everything that you can imagine there at the fairgrounds.
Thank you.
It seemed like the Lawton Ranch deal sort of addressed a potential shortcoming of ACART in that I think ACART relies on the animal owner to get the animal to the evacuation center, the fairgrounds or
Right.
whatever. Where ACART doesn't have a list of folks with livestock trailers and so forth.
However, that's where my department comes in animal control, because I do have the ability to call in neighboring agencies and counties to come in and do those things with people that are very well trained in going in and doing those to limit the amount of problems that may occur with people going into areas that may not be trained to do so.
So we could have handled those evacuation measures through animal
My
control
department.
offices.
Correct,
rather than-
and I could have used neighboring agencies to come in and help with that, which I did call on some of the neighboring agencies to come in and help in our county with some of those things. But we could have definitely called on them to have more trained personnel in there doing those things.
Do you think you would have got enough trained personnel?
We certainly had enough people offer from enough neighboring agencies that we would have had people that were trained to come in and do those. I had plenty of animal control agencies on standby to respond.
Thank you to you, thank you to ACART.
Thank you all.
Can I address this situation, please?
We're really trying to talk agencies
This
and
is
their
agency.
response.
This is
Okay, this is
agency
agency
specific.
response.
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
which agency do you represent?
I represent the Amador Community Foundation, who deals with ACART. And there is a significant insurance issue that did not get brought up. And I just feel it's really necessary for you as a board to understand that the liability that's out there with individuals doing good works could be prohibited by going through ACART, which has the liability insurance through the county. And I just wanted to bring that up, that there are other reasons besides just good people doing good things. There is significant liability when you're doing this kind of work that could have fallen back on private people. I just wanted to bring that up, that's all.
Good point, Kathleen.
Okay, next is Frank Lashinsky.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'm a bit tall, but I'll try to work with a microphone here. I would like to address some of the concerns and issues of communications. I also want to preface my discussion in that the majority of my comments are based on the questionnaire that Supervisor Morgan put out. So I'll be primarily addressing what's going on in our regulated telephone area, which is District 3, which was the main area, as you all know, that was so dramatically hit by the Butte fire. First of all, there's been some, I'm going to say, misunderstanding in the past as far as how to better prepare your home for any type of a disaster, whether it's a fire, whether it's an extended power outage, whether it's a weather-related emergency, or acts of terrorism, God forbid. And I'm hoping to address some of those and clarify that just a little bit as far as they understand how our network works and how it will ensure that they have proper communications given any one of these events. First of all, Mr. Lockwood hit it spot on. You need a corded phone, an old-fashioned landline phone. Keep it in the closet, wherever. Make sure that there's a jack in your house that is readily available. That you can, if you don't use this phone all the time, you can take it out of storage or whatever, plug it into the jack, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to work. That's really important. Years ago, the Federal Communications Commission mandated that we, as a telephone provider, end our service at a box on the outside of the house. That box is called an SNI. That stands for Standard Network Interface. So our services come into that box, and that's where our regulated responsibility ends, at the jacks in that box. So it's very important that our subscribers realize that chances are there's going to be dial tone, and if they have internet access from us, it's going to be live at that box, if they have the means to connect to it, or, which I will address, if they have backup power to operate the devices in their home to stay connected. Secondly, beyond this device, there's another connection if you have broadband called a DSL modem. And normally, if you have Wi-Fi in your house, you're going to have a Wi-Fi router associated with that DSL modem. They're all powered by power bricks. So if the power goes out, they're dead. Even though the dial tone and the broadband is active at the SNI, you got no coverage in your house, you got no connectivity. The method of taking care of that would be to have, in a short outage, a UPS, that stands for uninterruptible power source. They're available from Staples, other providers. They would hold the DSL modem wireless router up for anywhere from 1 to 6 to 7 hours, depending upon the sizing of the unit. So that is something that subscribers can do to make sure that they don't lose connectivity. Next, naturally, would be the generator. Even
Is
if
that
you have,
basically the uninterruptible power source, basically a battery almost?
it's exactly what it is, Supervisor. Exactly what it is. So it's a battery in there that stays charged, and in the event the power goes out, your devices are operational for the amount of time that's rated on that battery in that device. And you have a generator, which we all know can either be one of the fancy ones that's connected up to your home, or a smaller unit where you bring the individual extension cords in, and I'm not an electrician, so I hope I'm not causing any problems here, but you run some cords around and they keep your critical devices going without backfeeding into the network. And you gotta be careful, as we all know, with a generator and PG&E and keeping those folks out of harm's way. The other thing that I'd like to address is cellular coverage. Most of the people here know that the major providers of cellular in District 3 have an option called a microcell or a femtocell. That's a small cellular base station that goes inside the house that connects to an internet connection off of our DSL modem and acts as your own little cell tower within your home and your porch and to a certain degree your property. If that is properly backed up with a UPS or a generator, that will still function. So even though you may not have cellular coverage from the tower, from the local tower, you can still receive cellular coverage in your house if it's properly set up, and the broadband connection and the dial toner are functional. Next is, if you own a cell phone or a tablet and you would like to have a low-cost alternative to keep these devices active, by all means, buy an in-car charger for your cell phone so that you get into a situation where the power's out for an extended period of time. You can jack into the accessory outlet in your car and charge your phone. That way you're not going to be out of communications either in your home or when you're away from the home. Or you can go on one of the online retailers or buy locally, whatever, and get a solar charger pack, which plugs into your cell phone, takes the light from the sun, converts it into electricity, charges your cell phone. So these are all issues that I wanted to bring up to increase communications in the event of an emergency. Next, I'd like to briefly talk about our network and what we are doing to, shall we say, after we reviewed the results of the Butte fire, what we're doing to make sure that we increase our reliability within our network. First of all, we were in the process of deploying additional brand new generators to all of our remotes. Our remotes are basically the devices that you see alongside the road in Supervisor Morgan's area primarily, that they look like a little kind of a tan wire building out there, and that provides all the electronics that provide the dial tone and the broadband into the homes. Almost all of those have generators. They all have generators. So we have a whole new purchase of generators are going in, state-of-the-art. They're DC generators, so they go directly into the battery packs that are in these remotes. Next, we are tripling the capacity of our fuel bottles. They run on propane, the generators do, and it was in the past that we'd have to run out there more often than not within probably 8 to 12 hours and change these bottles out. The new bottles will allow us to go for multiple days without having to go up there and refill them. So an additional area of reliability that we are building into our network. One of the other things that I'd like to address that Volcano does that's unique in our industry is that we power our remotes, and there are many of them. There's some larger remotes that have the generators, and then there are smaller remotes that are closer to the individual subscriber homes that allow us to bring the heavy bandwidth capacity into these homes. We reuse the existing copper wire that was used only at the time for dial tone. Now what we do is we take these surplus copper wires, we bond them together, and we drive power over them so that we can power remotely these smaller remotes out of the larger remotes and have a centralized power grid. Saves us a lot of time, saves us a lot of extra little tiny generators trying to get all these smaller remotes back up and operational. So another unique thing that the management of our company has done to more or less add reliability to the network. Next, we are, especially in Supervisor Morgan's area, I would say we're 98% buried underground. So that means that in the event of a catastrophic fire, yeah, we're going to suffer some downtime, we're going to suffer some issues when a pedestal or a remote burns down, but the majority of our infrastructure is out of harm's way, buried anywhere from 24 to 36 inches under the ground. So that's another thing we've got going for us. Our central office, which is the hub of this, which is located in Pine Grove, is built like a bunker for any of you that have been there before. And it has a full range of batteries that are rated, I think, for about 4 or 5 days. We can run on just the batteries alone for about 4 to 5 days. We have 2 very large generators there that back the batteries up. So in the event that one generator fails, we have another generator back it up. So there's always room for error, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that that key location is protected and survivable. The other thing that I know some of you supervisors know this already is that we've been really hard at work to develop diverse routes of connectivity down to the valley. In the past, there was only maybe one route. And if that route gets cut, and I'm referring to fiber optic cabling, then that's all there is. The show's out until someone fixes that fiber. We currently have 3 diverse routes going down to the valley, and in the event of some act of terrorism, God forbid, we have 2 diverse connections, one in Stockton and one in Fresno. In the event that something goes wrong in Stockton, we have a redundant connection in Fresno and vice versa. Okay. And last, I am not authorized by the cellular providers to discuss this in detail, but I can give you a rough idea of what's going on from a cellular perspective without naming names. In District 3, there are 6 enhanced LTE long-term evolution, and that basically is state-of-the-art. That's what you're going to get down in Silicon Valley, the Bay Area, whatever. They will either be in service or are in service in 2060. These are all in District 3. There are 1 new 3G, which is 3rd generation, going in, and there is 1 3G enhancement. This is all in District 3. There's a additional LTE deployment that just went online in Jackson. There is a new LTE deployment in Ione, and there will be a new LTE deployment, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, in Fiddletown. I say that with a smile. Future, and I'm about done, folks. One of the issues I've heard is the inability to get local content reliability. Reliability because of, shall we say, some limitations there. We're in the process, Volcano's in the process of testing, I have it at my home, something called broadband TV. And it will have all of the local packaging on it, some of the local channels, local news channels, and it is true video, all bundled together in a broadband infrastructure. So that means if you have a broadband connection from Volcano, you can get this service, and as long as you can keep your TV up, and as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, you can make sure that your DSL modem and your router is powered. You're going to have TV service, and you're going to have the local hometown radio on it. You're going to have some other new stuff that we're bringing on board.
That would be going through your fiber?
That would be going through the copper, Supervisor Glass. That would be a DSL connection, but yes, it would be.
But not dependent on a wireless broadcast in the case of the radio station. So
Correct, sir.
Radio station.
Correct. It would be another form of being able to listen to KBCG. We're also in the process right now negotiating with another radio station, a community radio station over in West Point, to put their content on as well. And we are working with them to give them a place on one of our towers in West Point so that their broadcast is available as well, which it turns out that that radio station was a real key issue in Calaveras County during the fire. So that's something that our owner decided she wanted to do. We have also been working for, I would say 3 or 4 years now, to the point where I'm almost half embarrassed to discuss it, but it looks like we've got some progress there with the Amador County Sheriff's Department to place a new communications repeater on the top of Chairlift 10 in Kirkwood, which will provide some additional emergency communications to the basin in Silver Lake and also to the valley in Kirkwood. And it looks like we're going to get there this year. So I'm very pleased to announce that. And with that, I thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are you getting good cooperation on that installation of the top chairlift 10 from Forest Service? You know, that would be Forest Service ground?
Yes, sir. I would say we have good communications and cooperation there. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
I have a comment. I would say that Volcano telephone provides very good service, and they kind of remind me of a little engine that could.
wireless mic that I could use?
Want the high-tech stuff?
My name is,
Battery dead.
Sure. Okay. Over there, Jim? Check
Let's do the GPS.
I'm sitting here, listening.
There's a switch on the side.
Yeah, that's just good. That's good. Okay.
That's not plugged in. Where'd you have it plugged in?
I know you want me to be in front of the microphone so I can be recorded on this, but I don't like to have people look at my back. I would like to look right at you and talk to you directly. My name is Jim Geedy. I'm the owner, general manager of KVGC in Jackson.
Hey, Jim, if you want,
Yeah.
I think you probably just bend that back over and talk right into it, I think.
Okay. This is my, thank you. This is my 40th year of assisting CAL FIRE, CDF, forestry, whatever you want to call it, in fighting fires from KNGT through Hometown Radio, now KVGC. Probably the biggest fire that we worked on before this one was the old Gulch fire. And because I don't want to forget you guys either there. The old Gulch fire in Calaveras County, and I think one of the forestry folks alluded that at one time the fire was beginning to burn in the old Gulch burn and was heading up that way. And we were going, uh-oh, because if it goes there. Yeah, Frico City. I actually grew up in Frico City, not as an inmate, but as my father worked for the state. So that burned almost all of it in the old Gulch fire. My brother lived in Arnold. He was evacuated during the old Gulch fire. Amador County hasn't had a fire the magnitude of the old Gulch fire. We've had the Sand Fire, which is on the county line. We've had large fires in the Comanche area. We've been surrounded. We're lucky that we've, again, the term's been used throughout the day today, dodge the bullet. Well, it's not, like you guys said, it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. And in all this time, I just want to say, I wish the Sheriff's Department was here because they could hear this. But we've got nothing but total cooperation from the Sheriff's Department, from Under Sheriff Wagner. Sheriff Ryan was at an event when it first started. He was in communications with Jimmy the whole time. Jimmy was on it right away with both Jack Mitchell and I. Jack's not here. I don't think anybody from the paper's here to talk. But they were with us all the time. CAL FIRE. Did Rob leave already? Rob was with us the whole time with it. And it not only allowed us to ease people's minds who were going through all this, but it actually eased our minds too. Because we're sitting in a room, air-conditioned room, while these guys are out fighting, and we don't know what's going on. We did have a little bit of insight. We had some inside stuff, so we could tell where things were going and where it was. But CAL FIRE did a fantastic job. All the services, from American Legion to the health department to the local fire guys to the police, the CDF. I know there was problems early on, in fact, when they were raising evacuations in Pine Acres. There's a couple of Amador roads, or there's different trails that have two names. And the CHP officers we had were from Vacaville or Fairfield. They didn't know what, Amador this from Amador that. So there was some breakdown, but as far as over the years and in past, Amador County did a great job. Calaveras County could learn from Amador County for what they did. It was spectacular. Supervisors were there at the briefings. There was a briefing every day at the command center here at Frogtown. Eventually it moved to Angels Camp. So kudos to everybody. Thank you. As far as reception of the radio, Frank and I have talked about this before. Frank kind of stole part of my speech here today in the use of tablets, phones. Everybody has in their pocket right now total communications with the world. You just don't know it. You can get any service that you want right now with your phone. We're in the process of producing a video right now. It's almost complete on how to download the station's app, the streaming app, to your phone. Phone, tablet, Android, Apple. So you'll just be able to watch it, make a couple of things, boom, and there it is in your pocket, in your hand, your tablet, your phone, on your desk, how you can stay in contact. As Frank said, use your charger, charge it up. As far as reception of KVGC, I can't change physics, unfortunately. I cannot change physics. AM uses ground plane, travels on the ground. And unfortunately, as we head up to the upcountry in District 3 and in that area, we encounter granite and we encounter harder snow earth. And so the signal won't really travel that far. I mean, you can pick us up in Modesto and Folsom and Galt, all you want, but the Faith Lutheran Church is pretty much as far as
I worked at PG&E when we took a tour down Electra Road and saw the havoc that was just wreaked down there and that steep terrain. It was pretty impressive to see your crews out there getting those poles replaced in some pretty untenable country.
It was also impressive to drive through Pine Grove and
See six
hear
big
those
mobile
big
systems
generators.
running,
Like,
yeah.
what is that? Oh my God.
6 generators.
Yes.
I want to make this very brief. I won't be able to leave the room if I don't thank the Amador Water Agency. They were a big part in this too, and I see them sitting in the front row.
I know, I've
And
been waiting to be up front.
They're our last speakers, I think. Yeah.
Gene's head.
I want to hear from Manicero.
Gene Mancebo is actually up next.
Good afternoon, and thank you for putting this on. I'll try to keep the points really brief, just the high points. Starting out, I'd be remiss if I didn't recognize Damon Wyckoff, who's here today, our operations manager, who did an excellent job keeping our crews moving and covering bases out in the field. Immediately once the fire started, our operators jumped in and started increasing the plant capacity, ramped up all of our treatment plants with the anticipation of what could be happening. That happened very early on, immediately upon the fire being recognized. Distribution operators were what we call isolating tanks, focusing the water in the areas of where we thought the needs were. So in some cases, we have to actually go out in the field, opening and closing valves, so that water can be focused where it's needed the most, right near the fire. We also immediately, probably the following day, started dispatching emergency generators, actually the day of the fire. Recognize that we have a lot of remote sites that require either booster pump stations for the water supplies, but don't forget wastewater. We have a lot of wastewater facilities in remote areas. Those also require some type of electrical power. So we dispatched generators into some of the remote areas to maintain the wastewater systems as well. And those continued throughout the time of not having power. The following day, we also obtained larger generators that we rented so that we utilize some of the large pump systems that we have, which now have been replaced with the gravity pipeline. And we are right at the cusp of having that operational. As it turned out, we were able to get it operational because of our concerns for having the fire hydrants energized on that gravity supply line pipeline. But also, we could have switched back over between the emergency pumps, the generators, and also the gravity flow as necessary to maintain the treatment plants up in the Buckhorn area. During the fire, we estimate about 7.5 million gallons of water was used in addition to what we would normally provide for. Now, that wasn't just for fighting the fire, but it was also for the firefighters, PG&E's crews that were on site. I mean, we basically had a small city of folks here helping out with the firefighting activities. So those all required additional supplies. We found that there was a large draw on one of our gravity pipelines that comes out of Lake Tavoo. So we saw huge amounts of water. We see the benefit in having some of these gravity supply lines that are in remote areas, having fire hydrants on those. So that was something else of recognition. We spent about 550 hours of time during this duration of the fire just maintaining facilities, keeping things rolling. Thanks to Supervisor Plass and giving us a heads up, there was also learned of a a lot of property owners that had animals that weren't necessarily in the fire zone, but they had no power. They couldn't run their wells. They were, you know, they were in need of getting water. So we have a large tank truck. We were able to distribute water to areas. This was non-potable water. But we also set ourselves up with potable water to bring that out to folks that were, again, without water in areas, and provided water at our facilities that people could bring their own containers and get larger amounts of potable water as necessary during the outage. Some of the improvements and things that I'd like to just touch base on. We started a program a couple of years ago working with the local fire departments to actually go out and test every fire hydrant in the systems throughout all hydrants that we have throughout the county. And that's worked out really well. I want to acknowledge the local fire departments, cities, and Amador Fire Protection Agency, all of them, because it has really helped out. One, that they get to go out on site, see where the hydrants are, operate the hydrants. If there's any issues at all, then they notify us. We go out and make repairs to those hydrants, and that has worked out extremely well. And we're continuing that and trying to expand on that to make improvements to our system. A lot of our facilities, especially up country, were based on very small pipes. And so small hydrants, and the flows are limited in those areas. And that's an area that we need to improve on, but it takes a lot of money. It's a lot of new pipelines, it's a lot of effort, but we are looking at ways. We actually are working with a grant right now through the CDBG program to update one area, and we're going to continue to look for funding to continue to expand on improving that upcountry system, as well as systems throughout the county. One item that was pointed out was mapping. The maps, we need to have good information for the fire departments. And so we are working on a program right now. Our board has approved a kind of an improvement to our mapping system where it'll be GIS compatible. We'll be able to download information in a GIS format. They can overlap that with their maps, be able to see where all the fire hydrants are. Those can be distributed. One thing about the mapping systems is that we don't have to have live data, either cell data or a website to download that data. Once that's been downloaded on either a cell phone or on a tablet, you can look at that. It's not live anymore. We can't update it, but it doesn't require communication at all times. So it becomes a map that you can blow up, look at, see the fire hydrants, see where they're at. And I think that's going to be very valuable. So we're looking forward to moving into kind of a new era of having to be able to download information that is people carry with them. Fire departments, law enforcement agencies, etc. Supervisor control and data acquisition, referred to as SCADA, is another area that was very valuable for us. We actually have equipment on most tanks, pump stations, treatment plants, where we can actually monitor what's going on with those. We can monitor levels of flows. In some cases, we can actually turn valves on and off, turn pumps on and off, and that's very helpful for us. Unfortunately, some of the tank sites that were right near the fire area, we do not have all of the capabilities. And so we could monitor the data, but to actually turn valves on and off, we had to travel into those areas. We had to be escorted into those areas to be able to open and close valves. So that's an area we are working on to expand our SCADA system, our capability to remotely be able to open and close valves as part of the work that we're doing. The gravity pipelines that I mentioned, again, I think that was something very useful. Several years ago, most all of our pipes that we put in, we looked for fire hydrant locations that make sense. We worked with the local fire agencies to help define locations that are safe for the firefighters to access. And so with any new pipelines going in, typically, especially in remote areas, we plan for having fire hydrants installed. As I said, they were heavily used on what we call the Amador transmission pipeline that we installed in about 2006, put online in 2007. We had fire hydrants out in the Lake Butte area that we used a lot. So we'll be continuing those activities. One last thing is on the generators, one thing we did learn, although the generators are tested and fired up frequently, we need to incorporate load testing on those as well. And so that's something we have increased the load testing frequency on all of our generators to ensure that they can take full loads when it's needed. That, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions that maybe Mr. Wacker?
Can I follow up with one point real quick? Just again, my name's Damon Wyckoff, I'm the operations manager for the water. And just to give the directors idea of scope of the upcountry water system, there's actually, including our wholesale customers, there's actually 27 tank sites and 10 pump station sites. So it's somewhat of a challenge to be able to manage all these systems with SCADA control. And without SCADA control, without the help of our operators and their capabilities and all of the knowledge that they have in their heads, it would be even more challenging and somewhat problematic at times. So we've also looked at implementing a process where we have our distribution guys working this year on writing down everything they know about every tank site, how to isolate that tank site, how to isolate the pump station, what neighborhood is affected, how deep is that breadth of that affection in that neighborhood? Is it 5 homes? Is it the entire subdivision? So we're also working on working through that process with our distribution guys as well.
Step in the right direction for sure. And I'd just like to comment on I did call Gene because I had folks up and down the Jackson Creek corridor, Clinton Road corridor out there that were all without power. Their livestock was going without water because it's all fed with water off the wells since Jackson Creek was largely dry. One request was, is there any way that the water agency could release water out of the ditch to flow down Jackson Creek and rehydrate it, so to speak, which would have been very inefficient, but I appreciate Gene coming up with an alternative solution to that with the availability of water, and I know it helped a lot of folks out there. I think at the end of the day, what we're learning here is it's incumbent upon people to be prepared for power outages and cell phone outages. If you are that dependent on those types of things, and we all are, particularly power, you've got to have alternative means of power in your homes, whether it be solar or a generator or whatever. It's imperative, or you've got nothing. You don't have water. I know that's my house. I'm without water. So much as take a shower if the power's not on. So, any other agencies that want to?
This is Rich Farrington.
Okay, you're the third one from the water agency, so make it quick.
Make it quick. Chairman and board members, my name's Rich Farrington. I'm upcountry director.
Speak right in that mic.
Huh?
There you go.
Okay. I'm the upcountry director for Amador Water Agency, District 3. My comments are in my role as representing the interests of upcountry residents. Appreciate you holding this workshop to focus on improvements that are needed for the next Butte fire, which will happen again. And we're lucky that the Butte fire didn't burn up Pioneer. Upcountry is in a very high fire hazard severity area, shown by CAL FIRE's map in your general plan draft EIR. Your board helped the water agency get the upcountry gravity supply line, which worked during the power fire outage because the water didn't need to be pumped. Your board also helped us get a community development block grant to fix 7 fire hydrants on Highway 88 that would not cause a health hazard to the neighbors. And thank you very much for your help with these. On the CDBG grant, the agency is not eligible, but working with the county, we were able to get funding, so very much appreciated. But more work is needed, as Gene alluded to. One of the big issues facing upcountry residents is 148 substandard fire hydrants that were in place when the agency took over. Passed out a picture of an 1.5-inch standpipe up country that is supposed to be a fire hydrant. Inch and a half in diameter, as I said. It's on Timber Court in Pioneer as one of the places where these things exist. This is not a standard fire plug. Fire chiefs say these standpipes are not usable to fill fire trucks. These are present, like I said, or were present when the agency took over the water system, and now we need to figure out a way to, how to fund replacing these with real fire plugs. This is an expensive effort because many water mains have to be enlarged. Well, the one you see here in this picture, it costs $70,000 to fix. It's not just putting a standard fire plug. The water main is 1.5 inches, and it's there are 6 homes on
Put
this
a
floor.
4-inch fire hydrant on an 1.5 inch main. Doesn't work too well.
No, it doesn't work.
That's good though.
I'd like the county to work with us to figure out how to fix this problem. As I said, these things existed prior to when we took over. We would not have, I certainly would not have approved these things that are substandard. I'm not sure when they were, maybe in the 60s. The agency didn't take over this system, I think, until the 80s. The county helped us with fixing problems in the Comanche water system that existed prior to AWA taking over. But when we get the next Butte fire up country, there'll be a huge loss of tax revenue to the county. And I would like to, in summary, I have 3 recommendations. That we jointly figure out how to fund replacement of the substandard fire hydrants, at least the critical ones that the firefighters or fire chiefs say, you know, these are key points that we need adequate water for filling fire trucks. I'd also suggest that you put a report together, sort of trying to capture the recommendations and whatever, so that we've got something in writing that we can continue to focus on. And I'd also suggest that you appoint a fire protection committee for your board to sort of monitor the activities and discuss, even be open to additional improvements that might come up. And this has worked well with our agency. We've been focusing the last 3 years on fire improvements to the system. And I think we made a number of good steps, positive steps towards improving it. The ability, I just visualize a big fire coming up out of the river and trying to come into Pioneer, and if we got enough water to hold it back or stop it, I think that's where we need to be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you, Rich.
You post?
Okay.
Oh.
Oh, someone else first? No, go ahead.
Devellery. Rapidly degrading to all chiefs and no Indians here.
Wow. Dave Ellery, Amador Fire Protection District Chief. I think what I'm going to do first is I'm going to answer or make a comment on a couple of things that were brought up earlier. As far as the N95 masks and the distribution, I think maybe Amador Fire can help with that. Most of our stations have generators, we have power, and we can put a couple of boxes on the engines. And when we come across people that were either evacuating or need that help, I think we can probably help out with that.
Put you on our plan.
That'll be good. As far as the water agency, I'm not sure where you got that tank truck from, but you're welcome. And in addition to that, we've been working really well with the water agency. The GSL that we did, we had put strategic places for hydrants. One of them is out in the middle of nowhere, but I think that'll be will definitely help. We will continue with the hydrant inspections. I worked with Craig Miller on that when I first got to the district. It definitely helps with the water district and distribution, and it definitely helps with the firefighters. And now that I'm on that, on the firefighters, a few years ago there was a Measure M that was passed by the county, and whether or not you voted for it or against it, it passed. And with that, to date, Amador Fire Protection District has 30 paid staff that supplements our volunteer staff, or in conjunction with the volunteer staff. Along with that, we have local agencies that have, also have paid firefighters. With that was an unprecedented response to the initial attack to the Butte fire. We had over 20 local resources that initially went to the fire with cooperation or with contracts with Lockwood, Sutter Creek, and the City of Plymouth. Amador Fire District put in several, a majority of those resources. After the initial response, local resources also were able to maintain 3 engines and 3 water tenders pretty much through the extent of the incident. I mention this because the Measure M that was passed gave our ability to address the incident. Some things in the future that I'm looking at as far as Amador Fire District, we actually have a program now to where we can recall firefighters at a moment's notice using the iPhone and an app. As was been stated before, the iPhone, the technology in your pocket is unprecedented. So we can ask for volunteers as well as rigs that were on the scene. Along with that, I had several comments from the community asking why our firefighters were at stations when there was actually a fire to be fought. As you heard from Chief Post, the resources came from all over the state, I believe the state of Nevada as well, all over the country. But we also had just the local agencies. In that first week, we had over 100 incidents that had to be addressed by local fire agencies. Some of those were to help with evacuations. Somebody that could not get to their car, they would call the fire department and we would help them get to their car and help them load up and get evacuated. So that, yes, we've sent people to the scene, but we also have, like Chief Post said, we still have incidents that occur. So there's a program that we came up with for our recall of our personnel is definitely a plus, and we'll be able to get more people back into the stations sooner.
Plus, Chief, we got a couple fires even during the Butte fire.
And that's correct. We did have a fire in the south of Jackson. Scottsville, yeah, and we also had one up in Lockwood as well. So we were still, and that one in Scottsville was a huge potential there.
Very.
The resources were in the area, thank goodness, and I'm going to stop that rather quick. I did hear a comment, and not to point fingers or anything, but I heard a comment that Amador Fire District stated it was not our fire. I had administrative personnel at the office answering phones, and when something happens in the county, or if there's a whiff of smoke, the Amador Fire District gets about 50 phone calls, and that person is pretty much overwhelmed. That person got information from me, I got information from CAL FIRE, and we tried to put that information out when phone calls came in. So I just want to ensure the board that we were doing our part. Matter of fact, the person that was answering the phones for Amador Fire Protection District was herself evacuated. So she did an awesome job to get that information out, and we were just relaying that information that we were getting from CAL FIRE, which I believe CAL FIRE said accurate information is the best. So we weren't going to put out anything that wasn't confirmed, and I was going to get my confirmation from CAL FIRE. And so further into the future, we're going to increase our staffing as long as revenues keep coming in. So with the increase in revenues, we're going to increase our staffing. And I don't know what I got. Any questions?
No, I think you put it succinctly, Chief. I mean, the day-to-day stuff doesn't stop happening just because we got a big fire happening in the county or the neighboring county. I mean, the car wrecks, the medical aid calls, all those things have to continue to be serviced, and AFPD filled in very well to make sure that that happened, as well as staffing, I think, the CAL FIRE station during.
Yeah, actually we did that as well. So
yeah.
Our personnel, our volunteers came out. Normally when we ask for anybody for that matter, we asked for a 2-week commitment, and we had our volunteers that took 2 weeks away from work to staff an engine that was actually staffed at Sutter Hill CAL FIRE station. So they definitely stepped up, as well as our paid staff. One of the things that we ran across, sorry, I do have one more thing, the Rancheria. When the Rancheria came up and stepped up and did what they did for the evacuation, it was an awesome, unbelievable sight, actually. But people were taken care of right away. Something that we realized early on is that all those people were coming in, they still have needs as well. So Amador Fire, actually, we increased our staffing at the Rancheria, so we had 2 fully staffed engines, so that we could take care of the Rancheria as well as the outline.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Chief? Chief?
Real quick do-over. I heard some comments and we had discussed earlier some topics that based on some comments that I heard. I just had a little bit of follow-up, and I'll preface it by saying that, you know, CAL FIRE can't do its job without our local government fire department cooperators, and we appreciate everything they do. They're an integral part of our state response system here locally. So we can't underscore the importance of, you know, closest resource and the drop in every cooperative relationships that we have. They're outstanding. There's a lot of good going on here in Amador County, and I go back to a comment you had made earlier, Supervisor Plass, about grant funding. And one of the things when you look for grant money that you need, the questions you're going to have to answer are, do you have those cooperative relationships in place? And is your project of such a scale to have a positive impact on the landscape and not just one small piece of ground that doesn't play an integral part in the larger problem? And so one of the things that we're working on is we work very closely with El Dorado National Forest, the BLM, SPI. I'd be remiss in not recognizing Craig Ostergaard and all of the cooperative fuels reduction work we do. And so this group basically was the beginnings of what we now know as the Fire Safe Council and the CWPP here in the county, and have been meeting regularly, the agencies, all of us, including SPI, since 1994. And I guess we're called the Fuels Reduction Co-op, or used to be known as the Amador Burners, and we are also kind of a grassroots effort of the agency folks. And so we met earlier this year, post-Butte fire, to come up with our own plan and revitalizing the CWPP, making some appropriate updates as necessary, but then also working on this base map. And one of the things we need to do is get recognition. And what the community might not understand is how far ahead we are in Amador County in actually treating fuels on the ground. And we sometimes lose sight of the fact that if you were to go from the community of Pine Grove to the Alpine County border, in essence, the entire Highway 88 corridor has been treated by all of the landowners, with SPI, CAL FIRE participating, and the work that the El Dorado National Forest has done on 88. If you come from Fiddletown almost to River Pines and you go southwards to West Point or Tiger Creek Dam, the entire ridgeline system has almost been treated through the cooperation of landowners and SPI, the work we're doing with CAL FIRE and all the people participating in that. So if you draw that picture as a Southern Cross, we in essence we're almost done treating our entire major east-west ridgeline, our major north-south ridgeline, yet we have no recognition. And the federal government recognizes projects through a program known as the Cohesive Strategy. And what the Cohesive Strategy is to the national plan for communities to have fuels reduction projects is to give recognition. That recognition will then potentially give us some weight in grant application processes, because we are identifying the fact that the work we do is landscape in scale. And so when you add it to what Calaveras County does and what El Dorado County does, we damn near go from Auburn to the Tuolumne County line. And so at that point, you potentially can overcome some of those grant writing obstacles that require you to, meet all these requirements. And so Rick's staff, Division Chief Paul Loish and I are going to work this winter to apply for Cohesive Strategy recognition for all the work that the Calaveras Burners have done since 1994, in an attempt to, shore up our ability to access some of that grant funding. And then Jim from the radio station had made a comment about the Old Gulch fire that I think is really important, is that based on the long-term drought and the fuels conditions that we don't anticipate going away anytime soon, it's important to recognize that the Gulch Fire is within the boundary of the Butte Fire, the entire Gulch Fire, and that the Butte Fire did in one day what the Gulch Fire took 4 days to do. And so that's the problem we're up against. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chief. Well, with that, I think we need to thank our recorders for hopefully capturing all this, and coupled with the recording. I think somebody made the comment about putting a report together that sort of encapsulates a lot of these comments and ends up with some conclusions and suggestions at the end of that report.
Yes.
That sort of brings all these comments together into sort of one or several cohesive messages, I guess.
Wouldn't be a bad thing. You know, one thing I will say though, you talked about the cellular service, and it's something this board was aware of, I want to say 4, 5, 6 years ago. I believe we took actions that made it easier to install cell phone towers, and there was some controversy with that we were wrecking the county. We just recognized the need and tried to fill that need.
Fair enough. Yeah, there's a lot of things that everybody's been here kind of stating what they've done as agencies and so forth. I think we should take a little time to recognize that both our support of the gravity supply line, which ended up being a very contentious and controversial project in the upcountry, proved its value in this Butte fire, and will certainly prove an even greater value in the years to come. The limiting of the restrictions on cell phone tower coverage will help get more coverage of these 6 new towers that are going up country. Their relationship with the Forest Service that has come about in the last few years, I think will pay dividends as well. So, you know, we're all doing what we can. Somebody made a statement earlier that seemed to hinge on that this board didn't care about what was going on in the upcountry, and nothing could be farther from the truth. We have made all kinds of efforts to help improve the conditions, the fire resiliency, and just overall level of service available in the upcountry area. We recognize it's the risk that it's at, and I think we work collaboratively with a multitude of agencies in the area to help see to it that all the areas of the county are protected equally.
And I'd just like to say that, as I told Supervisor Plass, I had hoped to end this meeting with maybe a handful of action steps that you agencies are going to take. It's way more than a handful, so good for you. Good for you. And we will write it up and share it, definitely.
Okay. With that, thank you very much for everybody for coming and participating. That's great information. And we're adjourned.
It lost power